Janet Gunn here with Focus TV. Amy Schuber, take one. Hi, I'm Janet Gunn here with Focus TV, and today my fearless female guest is Amy Schuber. Amy is the founder of Be Inspired by You, along with hosting her successful podcast called Inspired Conversations. She is a coach for life and business because who you are in life is who you are in business. So let's listen to what she has to say, working from being transformed from the inside to the outside. Hi, Amy. Thank you for being here.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I feel so honored and grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. I love it. So, well, I have to start off and ask you, what inspired all of this inspiring content?
Wow. It's interesting. I think I had a moment in my life where I was just really unhappy with what I was doing, where I was working, how I was living. I mean, all of it. It just sort of compounded, and I needed change. And it was way far back before I started any of this. But in the moment of that, where I was just looking around like, wow, there's got to be more to life. I know a lot of us have asked that question, but there's got to be more to life than just going to work and leaving and feeling unhappy and just that grind.
Mm-hmm.
And so the grind really got to me, and I made a choice and a decision to just change. And I left my job, and at the same time I was doing personal development. I was taking a career class. I hired a life coach, and she actually told me not to do some of the things. And I was like, but my gut is telling me something else. And so I listened to myself. So when I look back at where I am now and why I am here, it's because I made some changes and risky changes. And it was because I listened to myself. And so when I started exploring, and I gave myself space to explore my life, like, okay, I'm not happy doing this job, and I was in marketing, and I had worked for some amazing companies, but I just was unfulfilled. And so when I made that decision, I also made the decision to give myself space to explore and be more creative. And I thought, maybe I can do something completely different that I've never thought of. No one trained me in the things I was doing. And what if there's more to me? And that's how I was feeling. There's more to me than just this, this grind.
Who's on a routine.
A routine and not getting anything out of it, not even getting the promotions, like working really hard and finding dead ends everywhere I was going with my career. And I knew I was good at what I was doing, even though I didn't love it.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, if I'm going to do something and be good at it, I should really love it.
Yeah.
Even so, then you don't have the dead ends, right? You can feel like you're making progress because you're being fulfilled. But at the time, I didn't know what that was like because I never experienced it. Now on the other side of it, I know, because I followed my path and I followed my truth. And I think I say that about transforming from the inside out because there's no other way.
Yeah.
I had to get so miserable that I made the decision to quit my job and leave and make some changes. And we all get to a point, whatever it is in our life, relationships, business, our jobs, to make a change. And sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's just getting a new job at the same company because you're just like, this doesn't feel right. And sometimes it's dramatic. For me, it was dramatic. And I think I'm extreme that way. So that's why I did it the way I did it. But at the time it felt really dramatic.
And then did you have your life coach? Before you left your job?
I did.
And was it when you were working with the life coach? Was there an aha moment for you that said, wait a minute, I think this interests me. I'd love to do this or dive more into it?
To be a coach, not at the time I was working with her, which was interesting. I actually I first was introduced to her because she was an astrologer, and I got my charts read. And then she's also a life coach. And I thought, I feel I need guidance. Mm-hmm. So it started my conversation with her. But it's so funny. No, I didn't think I was going to be a life coach when I was working with her. She got me through those times. Yeah. And when I moved, I was living in San Francisco at the time, and then I moved back to Southern California. She basically got me through that time. And I think the reason I had the courage to make changes was because she was grounding me, supporting me and grounding me in myself, and gave me the support I needed in order to make some changes, because I realized that I had the courage and I could take the risk. And looking back, that's exactly what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But I didn't see that was something inspiring in me that I would be doing in the future. But what was interesting was I started doing the exploring, and I just was open and available to opportunities. And so, you say you want change is going to come for you.
Yeah, careful what you ask for.
Exactly. Whether it's positive or negative or whatever, change will come
Yeah.
for you. And that's what happened. So I got all these opportunities to do this exploration. I went to the Interior Design Institute and took like a 12-week class, and I got my design certificate because I thought, well, maybe I'm creative that way. Maybe that's something I never explored. Then I signed up for this women's entrepreneur group. And when I did that, that's where everything shifted. If I look back and think the one thing that maybe pivoted everything for me, it was working or signing up for that entrepreneur women's group. Because at the end of it, the leader, she looked at me and said, would you like to run this group? And I thought, what? I just did 4 weeks, and I was just trying to have my own creative process.
Yeah.
And I said yes, not knowing what that meant.
Yeah.
I had no idea what it meant. I just knew I loved it.
And then is that what started being inspired by you?
Yeah, exactly.
So you started that with
Right.
the coaching life, business,
Yep.
And being
Yep.
successful at both.
Yeah.
And then how did that turn into your podcast, Inspired Conversations?
Right. So I was starting the coaching route, and then just as an entrepreneur and learning all these different routes to build your platform and create opportunities for yourself. I did a telesummit with some interviews, and I love talking to people. And part of the entrepreneur group that I was a part of, I had monthly meetings, and I would interview an entrepreneur, and so it would benefit everybody in the room, and so that was really fun for me. And I didn't know I loved that. I didn't know, because I'd never done something like that before. And so I had done a telesummit interviewing people over the phone, and someone had told me after I did that, you should do a podcast. And I thought, what's a podcast? I had no idea what a podcast was. And so shortly thereafter, of course, opportunities started coming to learn about podcasting. And I was on a webinar, and the guy said, if you join my group to learn how to podcast, you'll be entered to win a microphone. And I thought, I was playing a game with the universe. I'm like, well, if I win the microphone, I'll do a podcast. And then at the end of the webinar, he called my name, and the next morning there was a microphone on my doorstep.
Well, that is quite a calling.
Right? So I was like, okay, now what do I do? And so I joined the group. I learned everything I could learn about podcasting, because that's another thing about me. I'm a learner. So if I'm interested, I'm going to learn things and try it. So I learned, and then I just started interviewing people. And so I thought, I'm going to call it Inspired Conversations, because that word inspire is something that speaks to my heart. I think, I called my company Be Inspired by You, because I feel like we have to be inspired by us, what's inside here, not from everybody outside of us. And I learned that the hard way, looking outside of myself for answers. And I was realizing, I've got to do the work myself. I learned that a bit with my life coach, and then I learned it more when I started just seeking. And, no one can tell you what you're good at. I mean, they can tell you and give you, affirmation and confirmation, but sometimes we're good at things that we don't want to be doing.
Yeah.
And that's confusing. And right when I had moved back to Southern California, also, I went to the women's conference. It was when Maria Shriver was in charge of it. And she opened the conference, and she read this beautiful poem. It was a Hopi poem. And the very last line is, "We are the ones we've been waiting for." And that struck me. It still gives me chills when I say that. It just struck me. And I was like, oh, I'm the one.
Yeah.
I'm running around looking for answers, but it's inside me.
It's inside.
And I've got to give myself the space to have that exploration about what it is. And what's funny is that line follows me around. I don't necessarily see that Hopi poem everywhere I go, but I'll get a card from a stranger, and it'll say, you are the one you've been waiting for.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
And so that really started that exploration for me. Like, we're the ones, and I want to help people discover that for them. So the reason I started Inspired Conversations was, I thought, what if I created a space and conversations for people to learn something, one thing that they can get out of this conversation that could change their life for the better, one positive thing. And whether it's wellness, whether it's health, whether it's something for entrepreneurship, something about values that they could take and put in their life, just one thing. What if they took that thing and created something and thrived in their life? Is really kind of brilliant.
How did you go about finding your guest? I mean, in the very beginning, when you started, did someone come to you, or how did you decide, how am I going to tailor this guest list?
Right. So when I was learning about podcasting, there was a couple routes you could go. You could do an interview show. You could, have a solo show. And I thought, oh no, I love talking to people. I'm going to interview people. No kidding. I just started brainstorming, and I realized I'm really blessed because I have amazing people in my life. Through doing the work I did with entrepreneurial women, I've met some amazing people. So I started with who I knew, and I had some amazing friends who were published authors, New York Times bestsellers and things like that. So I just started making a list of all the people who I was inspired by. Who are my friends that might say yes and give me the break in the beginning. And then I just kept going with my list. I'm like, well, what are the books that I've loved? And I would love to speak to that person. And at first I thought, this is crazy. These people aren't going to say yes. They don't know you, and you're creating a podcast out of nothing. And initially when I did it, I had no credibility, right? So I'm telling people I'm doing a podcast, but they can't go listen to it yet because nothing's been published. And so that was interesting. And I had a little insecurity around that, but I just moved through it. And I was really clear on my vision for the podcast. I was really clear on what I wanted to create and what I wanted people to get out of it. And that's what I shared with the people who I invited. So initially I did 40 interviews before it went live, before I published anything, because I was just trying to get ahead of it and be, productive. And I wanted to see if I could get that many interviews. Because what if I did one interview and then no one else said yes? And they say I think 90% of podcasts only have 10 episodes and then they die off. And so I was like, I am not going to be that statistic. And so I did a bunch of interviews, and that many people said yes. I think I did 44 interviews before I went live, and nobody said, can I hear it? Who else are you interviewing? Nobody asked me for the validation or the credibility. And so I went with
And then how many guests have you had so far?
To date, I've had over 240 guests.
And you're on iTunes.
It's on iTunes.
I just think it's great that you could listen to your podcast in the car, no matter where you are. I have it in, you could be in the grocery store. You can be working out. You can be walking your dog. And just seeing all the people that you've had to interview so far. And you have some serious thought leaders that have come onto your show.
Yeah, I have. And it's been such an amazing journey. The journey for me has been in letting go. Originally I thought I was going to have more of an entrepreneurial inspired conversation. And I started, the people I knew were entrepreneurs. So I'm like, oh, this is great how they started their business and why they're doing what they're doing and that whole thing. And then as I was making my list and as it grew, there's spiritual people on my list. There's just these amazing thought leaders, like you say. And I just started asking anybody, right? And so when you start asking anybody, there's the possibility of a no, a yes, and a maybe, right? And I don't control that. And so what was interesting was people saying yes, and who I started recording over and over. I'm like, well, I guess this is what people need to hear right now, because all of a sudden I'll be talking a lot of health and wellness. And then all of a sudden I'll be talking a lot of spirituality. And then some people have asked to be on my show without me inviting them. And I thought, oh, I must be onto something. And now people are seeking me to interview them, and then they fit right into the pocket of spirituality or health and wellness or entrepreneurship, and it's really taken a life of its own. And for me, the lesson has been just to surrender to it. Let what wants to happen.
So what do you see for the future, or what would you like to see your audience?
Gosh, I would just love to see my audience grow. I would love to see millions of people download this podcast and just hear the information, because it's not about me. It's about the people I'm interviewing. It's about the people and their message. And it's so clear to me that there's such amazing, positive, high vibing life in the world, and good spirit, and people who really want to hold people, in this good energy. And just in the times we're in, I think it's really important to stay positive and stay focused on our hearts and who we are. And if you can take one thing and make a difference in your life to be thriving, that's what I really want for people. I want people to know who they are, get to know who they are. And we do it in different ways, right? We go about it. Some of us go about it through fitness and health and nutrition. Some of us go about it through relationships. Some of us go about it through our entrepreneurial efforts. And some of us go about it through our, efforts in our family or our career, whatever that route is. And there's something for everybody, whatever you choose. And the point for me is like, you don't have to follow anyone else's path. You can follow your own,
right?
You know? And so I want to give people these, you know, these conversations to be like, feed their soul and let it feed them however it feeds them.
Yeah.
You know, there's some people that will maybe never listen to an entrepreneurial episode, but they're going to listen to all the spiritual episodes. And to me, I'm fine with that, you know, pick and choose.
And for anyone out there who's watching you, what is some advice that you could give for starting a podcast?
Oh my gosh, just go for it.
Just go for it?
Yeah. A podcast or anything, go for it. If you think you don't know anybody that you could talk to, what's genius about it is people say yes. I go to conferences all the time. So prior to my podcast, I went to a lot of conferences just because I'm a learner. And I would never go ask a speaker if I could talk to them. Never in a million years would I go up and be like, hi, I really loved what you had to say. I'd love to talk to you. Mm-hmm. Never. I do it all the time now. And the crazy thing is they say yes. They say yes to me. And so there's power in that. People want to be seen. People want to be heard. People want to share. Yeah. And I think when we recognize people with what they're doing, and help share their messages, you know, there's a yes there. And there's been way more yeses than nos.
Yes,
so if someone's thinking about doing something, just do it, because it's a pathway that's opening a door in your heart, and you don't know what that's leading to. I would have no idea what it's leading me to. It might be millions of listeners, or it might be something else. I don't know. I just hope every time I do an interview, I say a little prayer that, you know, miracles happen when people hear this. And whether they hear all of it or some of it or part of it, I don't know. I just want it to touch them in a way that, you know, it moves them to thrive in their life. And so if anyone has an idea to do something, just go for it.
Well, I think if you wanted a great way to start your day to be inspired, no matter where you are, what you're doing, or even if you're traveling, you're on iTunes, and it's Inspired Conversations, and it's fantastic. If you just look at her guest list, you won't even know who to click on first. But I promise you there's something there for you, because you really do have something for everybody in your guest list.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Yeah, you're just, I mean, I love it. Be inspired by you, Inspired Conversations, you know, inspiring people. I always like to ask my guests before we wrap up a couple of questions. So if you could tell me today, what are you grateful for?
Honestly, I'm grateful for being in this space with you. This is a beautiful, my favorite thing is to be in a conversation. So I'm really grateful for this time with you.
Oh, thank you. And tell us something about yourself that no one would ever know.
I don't think anyone would know that I love to tap dance.
Oh,
right?
Oh my gosh, do you still tap dance?
Off and on in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have tap shoes, and I've taken some tap classes with my sister recently in the past year. I love tap dancing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Random.
Yeah, random, totally. And then what's the first thing you do when you get up in the morning?
I think the first thing I do is roll over for 5 more minutes of sleep, to be honest. But then if actually getting up, I say gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just recognize, sometimes I'm not quite up, but I will recognize my day and what's ahead and be really grateful for waking up and what's in front of me.
Great.
Yeah.
And if you could hold anybody's hand today, whose would it be?
I'm going to have to say 2 people. It would be my great-grandmother and my grandmother.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, I thank you so much for being my guest today. You're really inspiring. And thank you for putting out this incredible content.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for doing what you do.
And you're on Twitter, you're on Instagram, you're on iTunes, your website. So I'll have all that up on our show.
Yeah,
where people can find you.
The usual places, all those social media places.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait. I mean, keep up the fantastic work.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, and you too. Thank you for having me, and thank you for creating a space for us to share.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Amy.